The knock came at dusk 3 days after Abraham buried his brother. When he opened the door, a woman tall enough to block out the dying sun stood on his porch, her scarred hands gripping a leather satchel. "Isaac's dead," she said, voice like gravel over steel. "I'm your wife now." Abraham's whiskey glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the floorboards. Welcome to a story of inheritance, survival, and the strangest love ever forged in the American frontier. Stay with me until the end and drop a comment about where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far this tale has traveled. Abraham Callahan stood at the edge of the freshly turned earth, his brother's grave still dark against the yellowed grass of the Montana Valley. The October wind cut through his wool coat like accusations, each gust whispering what he already knew: he was alone now. Truly, utterly alone. 3 days. That's all the time the world had given him to mourn before it came knocking. The sun was bleeding out behind the mountains when he heard it 3 solid raps against his cabin door, deliberate as hammer strikes. Abraham had been sitting at the kitchen table nursing his third whiskey of the evening, trying to make sense of Isaac's ledgers. The numbers swam before his eyes, debts and credits that told a story he didn't want to read. "Coming," he called out, though his voice cracked on the word. He hadn't spoken to another soul since the preacher had said his amens over Isaac's pine box. Abraham rose slowly, joints protesting after hours hunched over papers. The floorboards creaked under his boots, a familiar song in the cabin he and Isaac had built with their own hands 15 years ago. Back when they'd first come to Montana Territory, 2 brothers against the wilderness, certain they could carve out something lasting from this unforgiving land. He pulled open the door, and the words of greeting died in his throat. The woman standing on his porch had to duck slightly to avoid hitting her head on the doorframe. 6 feet, and then some built like someone had taken the idea of a person and decided to make it on a grander scale. Her hair, dark as wet earth, was pulled back in a severe braid that only emphasized the sharp angles of her face. But it was the scars that drew his eye, a network of pale lines across her knuckles, a puckered mark on her jaw that looked like an old burn. She wore men's clothes, denim pants, a flannel shirt that had seen better decades, and boots that could have doubled as weapons. A leather satchel hung from one massive shoulder. Abraham Callahan. Her voice was unexpected, not masculine despite her size, but rough, like she'd swallowed too much dust or screamed too many times. "Yes, ma'am. Can I help you?" She studied him with eyes the color of storm clouds, taking in his grief-hollowed cheeks, his uncombed hair, the whiskey stain on his shirt. "Isaac's dead," she said. It wasn't a question. Abraham's hand tightened on the door. 3 days passed. Did you know my brother?" "I knew him." She shifted the satchel. "I'm Marigold. I'm your wife now." The glass in Abraham's other hand, the one he'd forgotten he was holding, slipped from nerveless fingers. It exploded against the floor in a constellation of amber shards and whiskey fumes. "I'm sorry, what—" Marigold stepped forward, and Abraham instinctively stepped back, glass crunching under his boots. She entered his cabin like weather, inevitable, overwhelming, impossible to argue with. "Isaac sent me," she said, setting her satchel on his kitchen table with a thud that made the lantern jump. "Said when he died I was to come here, said you'd need me. This is some kind of mistake." Abraham's mind reeled, trying to make sense of this giant woman claiming to be his inheritance. Isaac never mentioned a lot of things. Marigold pulled out a chair, his brother's chair, and sat down. Even seated, she seemed to fill the room. "But he made me promise, so here I am." "You can't just—" Abraham gestured helplessly at the space she'd claimed. "You can't just show up and say you're my wife. That's not how any of this works." "How does it work, then?" She tilted her head, genuinely curious. "You planning on managing this place alone? Winter's coming fast. Fence needs mending before the snow. Roof's got rot in the northwest corner. Cellar doors hanging by one hinge." Abraham blinked. She'd been here less than 2 minutes and had cataloged more repairs than he'd noticed in 3 days of grief. "How do you know about— Oh, I've got eyes." She pulled something from her satchel, a folded paper yellowed and soft with handling. "And I've got this." Abraham took the paper with trembling fingers. Isaac's handwriting unmistakable even in its final shakiness. Brother, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and Marigold's found you. Don't run her off. You'll want to, but don't. She's rough as bark and strange as sunrise, but she's what you need. What we both needed, maybe if I'd been brave enough. Trust me one last time. Let her stay. Isaac. This doesn't mean Abraham started. Doesn't mean anything except what it says. Marigold stood, and Abraham was reminded again of her impossible height. I'm not here to warm your bed or cook your meals if that's what you're feared of. I'm here to work, to help you keep this place from falling to ruin. And you expect me to just accept this. I expect you to be smart enough to know when you need help. She moved to the window, looking out at the darkening valley. Your brother sold parcels of land that weren't his to sell. Reuben Walton's been spreading that news in town. You've got maybe a week before he comes collecting. Abraham's blood chilled. What? Check the ledgers again. Page 7, third entry down. Marigold didn't turn from the window. Isaac was desperate, made desperate choices. Now those choices are yours to face. Abraham fumbled through the papers, finding the entry she mentioned. His heart sank. 20 acres sold to Josiah Mills, but those 20 acres belonged to Reuben Walton's spread. Isaac had either made a terrible mistake or committed outright fraud. Christ, Abraham breathed. Won't be him knocking on your door when Walton comes. Marigold finally turned from the window. So Abraham Callahan, you want to stand here arguing about propriety, or you want to start preparing for what's coming? Abraham looked at this strange, scarred woman who'd walked into his life like a force of nature. Nothing about this made sense. Nothing about her presence here was proper or reasonable. But then again, nothing about his current situation was reasonable either. You really knew Isaac. For the first time, something soft crossed Marigold's weathered features. Knew him, helped him, failed him maybe, but I made him a promise, and I keep my promises. Where did you come from before here? North, she said simply. And before that, farther north. And before that, places that don't matter anymore. Abraham recognized deflection when he heard it, but he also recognized capability. This woman, whoever she was, whatever she was, radiated competence like heat from a forge. You can stay tonight, he said finally. We'll figure out the rest come morning. Marigold nodded as if she'd expected nothing less. I'll take the barn. There's a room, Isaac's room. Barn's fine. Prefer it, actually. She picked up her satchel. You got any salted meat? Coffee? Some, not much. Make a list of what we need from town. I'll go in the morning. She paused at the door. And Abraham, pour out the rest of that whiskey. You'll need clear eyes for what's coming. Then she was gone, leaving Abraham alone with broken glass, his brother's letter, and the terrifying certainty that his life had just taken a turn he couldn't have imagined. He spent the next hour cleaning up the glass, each shard catching the lantern light like small accusations. When he finally made it to the barn with a bundle of blankets, and what food he could spare, he found Marigold had already cleared a corner, laid out a bedroll, and started a small fire in the old iron stove Isaac had installed years ago. Efficient, Abraham said, setting down the supplies. Necessary, she corrected. Efficiency's just what happens when you've got no room for waste. Were you and Isaac? He couldn't finish the question. No. She fed another piece of wood to the stove. Nothing like that. Met him in Billings 2 years back. He was in trouble, the kind that usually ends with a shallow grave. I helped. He insisted on paying me back somehow. Kept insisting even when the sickness took hold. What kind of trouble? Marigold's gray eyes reflected the firelight. The kind that comes from wanting more than you can afford and being too proud to admit it. Your brother had grand dreams, Abraham. This valley wasn't big enough for them. Abraham sank onto a hay bale. He never told me any of this. Men rarely tell each other the things that matter most. She pulled a knife from her boot, began cleaning her fingernails with practiced motions. He talked about you, though, constantly. Abraham the responsible one. Abraham the steady hand. Abraham who never took a risk he couldn't calculate. Is that why you're here? Because Isaac thought I needed to take a risk. I'm here because Isaac knew winter was coming and you'd be alone. She sheathed the knife. Everything else, what I am to you, what you are to me, that's just words. Work's what matters. Surviving's what matters. Abraham stood to leave, then paused. Marigold. That's an unusual name. My mother had unusual tastes. A ghost of a smile crossed her features. Said she wanted me to be both precious and hardy, like a marigold that blooms in poor soil. Did you bloom? She considered the question. I survived. Sometimes that's the same thing. Abraham returned to the cabin, but sleep eluded him. He sat at the kitchen table reading and rereading Isaac's letter, trying to hear his brother's voice in the words. Outside, wind howled through the valley, bringing the scent of coming snow. When dawn came pale and reluctant, Abraham found Marigold already at work. She'd repaired the cellar door using tools from Isaac's workshop, and hinges she'd somehow procured from God knows where. She worked with an economy of motion that spoke of years of physical labor, every movement purposeful, nothing wasted. There's coffee, Abraham called from the porch. She straightened, wiping sweat from her brow despite the morning chill. After. Wanted to get this done before town. About town people will talk. People always talk. She tested the door's swing, satisfied with its silence. Let them. It's not that simple here. This isn't some city where strangers come and go unnoticed. Stillwater Valley's got long memories and longer tongues. Marigold finally stopped working, giving him her full attention. You're worried what they'll think. About you. About me. About a giant scarred woman living on your property. Aren't you? No. She said it simply without defiance or pride. I stopped caring what people thought the day I grew taller than every man in my hometown. You can't live my life and keep caring about propriety, Abraham. You'll go mad trying. She had a point, though Abraham wasn't ready to admit it. At least let me go with you, introduce you proper. If you want. She gathered the old hinge's twisted metal that looked like it had been wrenched off by hand. But I warn you, I don't perform polite very well. An hour later, they rode into Stillwater, Abraham on his mare Buttercup, and Marigold on Isaac's gelding Tempest, the only horse on the property that could bear her weight without complaint. The town was just waking up, shopkeepers sweeping their stoops, the saloon girls dumping last night's ash into the street. They stopped first at Morrison's general store. As soon as they walked in, conversations died. Every eye tracked to Marigold, then to Abraham, then back to Marigold. Abraham, Tom Morrison said carefully from behind the counter. Heard about Isaac. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you, Tom. Abraham felt Marigold's presence behind him like a wall of heat. This is Marigold. She's helping out at the ranch. Tom's eyes widened slightly. Ma'am. Need supplies? Marigold said, producing a list from her pocket. Flour coffee, salt pork ammunition for a Winchester, and a Colt 45 nails tar for the roof and winter feed for the horses. Tom blinked at the efficiency of the order. That's quite a list. Winter's coming, Marigold said. You have what we need or not? I have most of it. The ammunition might take a day or two. We'll wait. As Tom began gathering supplies, whispers sprouted throughout the store. Abraham caught fragments. Giant woman. Where'd she come from? You see those scars? Marigold seemed oblivious, examining a display of farming tools with professional interest. Good steel, she murmured, hefting an axe. We'll take this too. Marigold, Abraham said quietly, we need to watch our spending. She turned those storm-gray eyes on him. You can't afford not to be prepared. Trust me on this. Before Abraham could respond, the bell above the door chimed. Sheriff Boone walked in, his star catching the morning light streaming through the windows. He was a solid man, fair-minded, but tough when needed. Abraham. He nodded. Miss? Marigold, she supplied. Miss Marigold. Boone's eyes took in everything, her size, her scars, the way she stood slightly in front of Abraham, as if ready to shield him. Passing through, staying, she said. Boone's eyebrows rose. That's so. In what capacity, if you don't mind my asking? She's helping with the ranch, Abraham said quickly. Isaac arranged it before he passed. Isaac arranged it, Boone repeated slowly. That's interesting, considering Isaac never mentioned any such arrangement to me, and we played cards every Friday night for 10 years. Marigold stepped forward, and even Boone, no small man himself, had to look up at her. Isaac didn't tell you everything, Sheriff. Men rarely do. I'm here to help Abraham through winter and settle some of Isaac's unfinished business. All legal, all proper, unless you have a law against tall women in Stillwater. A smile tugged at Boone's mouth. No, ma'am, we don't. Though we do have laws about other things, like fraud, and selling land that doesn't belong to you. Abraham's heart sank. You know about that? Reuben Walton made sure I knew. Made sure half the county knew. Boone's expression turned sympathetic. I'm sorry, Abraham. Isaac was a good man, but he made some bad choices near the end. Walton's within his rights to seek compensation. How much time do we have? Marigold asked. Before Walton takes action. Hard to say. He's still over in Butte, but he'll be back within the week. And when he comes, Boone shrugged. He's not a forgiving man. Neither am I, Marigold said quietly. Something in her tone made Boone study her more carefully. You have experience with men like Walton. I have experience with men who think might makes right, who take what they want because they can. She absently touched one of the scars on her jaw. Sometimes they learn different. I hope you're not planning on teaching any lessons here in Stillwater, Miss Marigold. We're a peaceful town. I plan on protecting what's ours, she said. Peaceful if possible. Other ways if necessary. Boone looked between her and Abraham. You vouch for her, Abraham. Abraham thought about the letter in his pocket about Isaac's words. She's what you need. I do. Then I'll hold you to that. Boone touched his hat. You folks have a good day, and Abraham, be careful. Walton's got friends, and they're not the pleasant sort. After Boone left, Tom Morrison finished tallying their supplies in uncomfortable silence. The total made Abraham wince, but Marigold paid it without hesitation, pulling bills from a roll that appeared from somewhere in her clothing. Where did you... Abraham started. Isaac paid me for 2 years of future work, she said. Consider this an investment in keeping his brother alive. They loaded the supplies onto the horses, aware of eyes watching from every window. As they prepared to leave, a woman's voice called out, Abraham Callahan. They turned to see Mrs. Abigail Forrester, the town's self-appointed moral guardian, bearing down on them with the determination of a cavalry charge. She was a small woman who made up for her lack of stature with an excess of righteous indignation. Mrs. Forrester, Abraham said wearily, don't you Mrs. Forrester me, young man. She planted herself directly in front of him, though her eyes kept darting to Marigold with barely disguised fascination and horror. What is the meaning of this arrangement? I'm not sure what you mean. You know exactly what I mean. Your brother not 3 days in the ground and you're parading around town with... She gestured at Marigold, apparently unable to find adequate words. With someone helping me keep the ranch running, Abraham finished. Would you prefer I lose everything Isaac and I built? I'd prefer you observe proper mourning and proper behavior. Her voice rose to ensure maximum audience. An unmarried woman living on your property. I sleep in the barn, Marigold interrupted. Though I appreciate your concern for my virtue. Mrs. Forrester's face reddened. The impropriety is entirely in your imagination, Marigold said. She leaned down slightly, bringing her face closer to Mrs. Forrester's level. Unless you're suggesting Abraham would take advantage of a woman under his protection, that would be a serious accusation. Mrs. Forrester stepped back, flustered. I'm suggesting nothing of the sort, but people will talk. People are already talking. Marigold straightened. At least now they'll have something interesting to say. She mounted Tempest with surprising grace for someone her size, leaving Abraham to face Mrs. Forrester's sputtering alone. She's helping me, Abigail, he said quietly, using her first name deliberately. Isaac trusted her, asked her to come. Would you have me turn away my brother's last wish? Something in his tone must have reached her because Mrs. Forrester's expression softened slightly. Your brother was troubled near the end, Abraham. The choices he made were his to make, and now I have to live with them. He mounted Buttercup. Good day, Mrs. Forrester. They rode out of town in silence, but Abraham could feel the weight of watching eyes until they crested the hill that hid Stillwater from view. "That went well," Marigold said dryly. Despite everything, Abraham found himself laughing, a rusty sound, but genuine. "About as well as introducing a wolf to a henhouse." "Wolves serve a purpose," Marigold said. "They keep the other predators honest." They returned to the ranch to find they weren't alone. A horse was tied to the porch rail, and a man sat on the steps whittling. He stood, as they approached tall Lean, with the kind of careful movements that suggested violence held in check. "Help you, oh," Abraham called out, though he recognized the man. Dale Hutchins, one of Reuben Walton's hired hands. Not quite a gunman, but close enough to make no difference. "Mr. Walton sends his regards," Hutchins said, his eyes fixed on Marigold. "Wanted to make sure you got his message." "Sheriff Boone already delivered it," Abraham said. "Sheriff delivers official messages. I deliver the other kind." Hutchins smiled, showing too many teeth. "Mr. Walton wants you to know he'll be back Thursday. Expects full payment for the land your brother stole. That's 20 acres worth at current prices. Call it an even $2,000. $2,000? Abraham's voice choked. "The land's not worth half that. It is when you factor in damages, emotional distress, lost opportunities." Hutchins' hand rested casually on his pistol. "Mr. Walton's been very distressed." "I'll bet he has, Marigold said, dismounting. Standing, she had several inches on Hutchins, and she used every one of them. "Distressed? He couldn't steal that land cheaper himself." Hutchins' smile faltered. "You'd be the woman from town, the one claiming to be Callahan's wife." "I didn't claim anything," Marigold said. "Others made assumptions." "Well, whatever you are, you'd best stay out of this. It's men's business." Marigold laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Everything's men's business until men make a mess of it. Then suddenly, they're happy for any help they can get. Hutchins' hand tightened on his pistol. "You threatening me?" "I'm observing," Marigold said mildly. "Like I'm observing that you're left-handed but wearing your gun on the left. Makes for an awkward cross-draw. Like I'm observing your horse is favoring his right foreleg stone bruise probably. And like I'm observing you've got to tell when you're about to pull that pistol, your shoulder dips just a fraction." Hutchins had gone very still. "You some kind of gunfighter." "I'm someone who pays attention." She stepped past him to unload the supplies. "Tell Walton he'll get what's owed. Nothing more, nothing less." "Thursday," Hutchins said, backing toward his horse. "Don't make him come looking." After he rode off, Abraham slumped against the porch rail. $2,000. "Might as well ask for the moon." "How much can you raise?" "Maybe 300. 4 if I sold Buttercup, but then I'd have no riding horse." Marigold continued unloading supplies with mechanical precision. "The land Walton claims, where is it?" "Eastern border of our property. Good grazing land, water access." Abraham rubbed his face. "Isaac, what were you thinking?" "He was thinking he was dying and desperate," Marigold said. "Men do foolish things when they're both." "You keep talking about men like you're not one of us." She paused, a sack of flour balanced on her shoulder. "I'm not one of you. Haven't been since I was 14 and already taller than my father. The world treats me different, so I learned to be different." "That why you came here? Because you don't fit anywhere else?" "I came here because I made a promise." She disappeared into the cabin with the flour. When she emerged, her expression was thoughtful. But maybe also because Isaac understood what it was like to not quite fit. "He saw me in Billings, didn't flinch, didn't stare, just asked if I could help him with some trouble." "What kind of trouble, you never said." Marigold leaned against the porch post, and for a moment, Abraham saw exhaustion in her posture. Card game gone wrong. He was accused of cheating. He wasn't just better at numbers than the others gave him credit for. They were fixing to hang him. I intervened. "How?" "Persuasively." She touched one of her scars. "Cost me some blood, but I've got plenty to spare." "And Isaac felt he owed you for that." "Isaac felt a lot of things. Guilt, mostly. Said I reminded him of someone, never said who. Kept trying to pay me back even when I told him the debt was clear." She looked out at the valley. "Then the sickness came, and he got it in his head that you'd need protection after he was gone. Made me promise." "Protection from what, Walton?" "From whatever came." She pushed off from the post. Your brother saw trouble coming like some folks see weather. Maybe not the specific shape of it, but he knew something was building. That night, they ate in relative silence, salt pork and beans coffee, strong enough to float horseshoes. Marigold had taken over the cooking without discussion, and Abraham was surprised to find she was good at it. Simple food, but well prepared. Tomorrow we start on the fence, she said, cleaning her plate with a piece of bread. Need it secure before Walton shows up. You really think he'll try something violent? I think men like Walton always try something violent when they don't get their way. It's what they know. She poured more coffee. Question is whether we're ready for it. I'm not a fighter, Marigold. Never have been. Everyone's a fighter when it's that or die. You just haven't been tested yet. She studied him across the table. Isaac said you were in the war. I was 15, carried messages mostly, saw some fighting, but nothing. Nothing I was part of. Just watching other men die. Still more than most. You know what violence looks like, at least. Knowing and doing are different things. Yes, she agreed. They are. A knock at the door interrupted them. Marigold was on her feet instantly, a knife appearing in her hand from somewhere. She moved to the window, peering out carefully. It's a woman, she said, surprised. Alone. Abraham opened the door to find Mary Chen, who ran the boarding house in town. She was a small Chinese woman who'd arrived in Stillwater 5 years ago and through sheer force of will had made herself indispensable to the community. Mrs. Chen, Abraham said. This is unexpected. Mr. Callahan, she nodded to Marigold. Miss Marigold, I apologize for the late hour. Please come in, Abraham said. Coffee. Thank you. Mary Chen sat primly at the table, her hands folded. I've come with a warning, and perhaps an offer. Moo. Marigold poured coffee, then sat back down, the knife disappearing as mysteriously as it had appeared. Reuben Walton has hired more men, Mary Chen said without preamble. 3 arrived today from Butte. Staying at my boarding house, though they don't know I understand English as well as I do. They speak freely. What are they saying? Marigold asked. That Walton plans to take this ranch one way or another. The money is an excuse he knows you can't pay. He wants the land, all of it, has for years. Mary Chen sipped her coffee delicately. Your brother's mistake gave him the opening he needed. Abraham felt something cold settle in his stomach. So Thursday he comes with enough men to take what he wants. The sheriff won't be able to stop it, won't try more likely. Walton owns too many people in town. Why are you telling us this? Marigold asked. Mary Chen was quiet for a moment. Your brother was kind to me when I first arrived. When others wanted me gone, he stood up in town meeting and said I had as much right to be here as anyone. It was a small thing to him, perhaps. Not small to me. And the offer? Abraham asked. I have some money saved. Not enough to pay Walton, but perhaps enough to help you leave. Start over somewhere else. Run. Marigold's voice was flat. Live, Mary Chen corrected. There's no shame in strategic retreat. There is when it means giving up everything, Abraham said quietly. This land is all I have left of Isaac, of our parents, 15 years of work. Then you need another strategy. Mary Chen stood. I've told you what I know. What you do with it is your choice. She paused at the door. Miss Marigold, the women in town are already telling stories about you. Some are afraid, but some are curious. A woman who doesn't apologize for taking up space. It's unusual. I'm unusual, Marigold said simply. Yes, that's what makes it interesting. Mary Chen smiled slightly. Good evening. After she left, Abraham and Marigold sat in the lamplight processing what they'd learned. 3 more men, Abraham said, plus Hutchins, plus Walton himself. We can't fight those odds. Not directly, Marigold agreed. But fighting isn't always about numbers. What else is it about? Preparation, position, psychology. She stood, began pacing. This ranch, how well do you know it? Every inch. Isaac and I walked every foot when we first claimed it. Good. Tomorrow you show me. every approach, every blind spot, every defensive position. She stopped pacing. Decision made. We're not running and we're not rolling over. We're going to make standing their ground cost them more than they're willing to pay. And if they're willing to pay any price, Marigold's smile was sharp as winter, then we make sure the price is everything they have. The next morning came wrapped in frost, the valley white as bone under a pale sun. Abraham woke to the sound of splitting wood, a rhythm so steady it could have been a heartbeat. He found Marigold behind the cabin, axe in hand, surrounded by enough split logs to see them through a month. "Been at this long?" he asked, his breath clouding in the cold air. "Since first light." She didn't break rhythm, the axe falling with mechanical precision. Couldn't sleep, kept thinking about defensive positions. Abraham watched her work, noting how she made it look effortless despite the size of the logs she was splitting. "You've done this before, not just the wood, preparing for a fight." "More times than I care to count." She finally paused, wiping sweat from her brow. "Come on. You promised to show me the land." They saddled the horses and rode out as the sun climbed higher, burning off the frost. Abraham led her along the property line, first pointing out the natural boundaries, the creek to the west, the rocky ridge to the north, the stand of pines that marked the eastern edge. "This is where Isaac sold the land," Abraham said, dismounting near a stretch of grassland that rolled down to a natural spring. 20 acres starting here. Marigold studied the terrain with a tactical eye. Good water access. Natural windbreak from those hills. Walton's wanted this for a while, hasn't he? His property borders ours here. He's been trying to buy us out for years, but Isaac always refused. Said Walton would turn the whole valley into one big ranch, push out all the smaller folks. Isaac was probably right. Marigold walked to the spring, knelt, tasted the water. "This is sweet water, worth fighting for." They spent the morning covering every inch of the ranch, Marigold asking questions about sightlines, approaches, cover. She made Abraham show her the old mining road that cut through the back of their property. The deer trails that connected to neighboring spreads, even the abandoned mine shaft Isaac had found years ago. "This shaft," she said, peering into the darkness. "How deep?" "Maybe 30 feet? Isaac always meant to explore it properly, but—" Abraham shrugged. "Never seemed important enough." "Everything's important when you're outnumbered," she dropped a stone, counted. "Good acoustics, sound would carry." As they rode back toward the cabin, they spotted dust on the main road. A single rider moving fast. Marigold's hand went to the rifle in her saddle scabbard, but Abraham recognized the horse. "It's Tom Morrison's boy. Jake." The boy, maybe 14, rode up with the barely controlled energy of youth. "Mr. Callahan Ma sent me. Says you need to know Sheriff Boone's been called away to the county seat. Won't be back until Friday." Abraham and Marigold exchanged looks. Friday was the day after Walton's deadline. "Convenient," Marigold murmured. "That ain't all." Jake continued, excited to be bearing important news. "Mr. Walton's back early. Came in on the morning stage with those men Mrs. Chen mentioned. They're all at the saloon drinking and talking loud about teaching folks to respect property rights." "Thank your mother for the warning," Abraham said, fishing out a penny for the boy. Jake took it eagerly, but didn't leave immediately. He was staring at Marigold with undisguised awe. "Ma'am, is it true you lifted Hutchins' horse clean off the ground?" "No," Marigold said seriously. "I just encouraged it to move, firmly." The boy grinned. "I knew it had to be something like that. Nobody could actually lift a horse." After Jake rode off, they continued to the cabin in thoughtful silence. As they unsaddled the horses, Marigold said, "Walton's showing his hand early. Wants you to stew on it, get scared." "It's working." "Fear's not always bad. Keeps you sharp. It's panic that kills you." She hefted her saddle onto its stand. "We need supplies from your workshop. Wire, if you have it. Oil. Glass bottles." "What for, T? Insurance." She headed for the barn. "And Abraham might want to clean your rifle. Oil it good." That afternoon, while Marigold worked on mysterious preparations in the barn, Abraham found himself going through Isaac's room properly for the first time since his death. He'd avoided it, the grief too fresh, but now he needed to understand what his brother had been thinking. The room was sparse. Isaac had never been one for possessions, but there was a box under the bed, and in it Abraham found more letters. Not just the one about Marigold, but others. Correspondence with buyers, with lawyers in Butte, with people Abraham didn't recognize. One letter caught his eye, dated just a month before Isaac died. The situation with Walton grows worse. He's not just after land anymore, he knows about the mineral survey. If those copper deposits are as rich as suspected, this whole valley will be worth a fortune. I've tried to buy us time, but my mistakes have given him the leverage he needs. I'm sorry, brother. I tried to protect our legacy and may have destroyed it instead. Abraham read it twice, then 3 times. Copper deposits, Isaac had never mentioned any mineral survey. Found something. He looked up to find Marigold in the doorway, her hand stained with oil, and something that might have been gunpowder. He showed her the letter. She read it slowly, her expression darkening. "This changes things," she said. "This isn't about 20 acres or $2,000. Walton's after the whole ranch because he knows something we didn't. But where's the survey? Who did it?" They searched Isaac's room more thoroughly, eventually finding a hidden compartment in his desk, something Abraham never knew existed. Inside was an official-looking document from the Montana Geological Survey dated 6 months ago. The language was technical, but the conclusion was clear. Significant copper ore deposits likely existed beneath the eastern section of their property. The exact land Isaac sold, Abraham breathed. He must have been trying to keep Walton from getting the mineral rights. Or he was desperate and made a mistake. Marigold studied the document. Either way, Walton knows. That's why he's pushing so hard. A sound from outside made them both freeze, horses, multiple ones approaching fast. Marigold moved to the window with cat-like grace, peering out carefully. 5 riders, she said quietly. Walton and his men. Abraham's mouth went dry. It's only Tuesday. He said Thursday. Men like Walton say a lot of things. She checked the loads in her pistol. Stay calm. Let me do the talking if it comes to it. They walked out onto the porch together. Walton was already dismounting his men, spreading out in a semicircle. Abraham recognized Hutchins, but the other 3 were strangers, hard-faced men with the look of those who hurt people for money and enjoyed their work. Reuben Walton himself was a different kind of dangerous. Tall, well-dressed, with silver at his temples and the bearing of a man used to getting his way. He smiled when he saw them, but it was all teeth and no warmth. "Abraham," he said pleasantly, "good to see you up and about. Grief can be so debilitating." "Reuben," Abraham managed, "you're early." "Oh, this isn't the collection visit, just a social call. Wanted to see how you were managing." His eyes fixed on Marigold. "And to meet your companion. The whole town's talking about her." "Marigold," she said, not moving from her position slightly in front of Abraham. "Just Marigold, no family name. None that matters anymore." Walton's smile widened. How mysterious, and how convenient, arriving just when poor Abraham needs help. Almost like Isaac planned it. Isaac was a planner, Marigold agreed. Planned further ahead than most folks realized. Something in her tone made Walton's eyes narrow. "Yes, about that. I've been going through some of Isaac's business dealings. Fascinating stuff. Did you know your brother was in communication with mining interests in Butte?" "Isaac had many correspondences," Abraham said carefully. "Indeed. In fact, I believe he may have commissioned a certain geological survey. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" "First I'm hearing of it." Abraham lied. Walton studied him for a long moment. "You know, Abraham, you're a terrible liar. Your brother was better at it, though, not by much." He pulled out a cigar, took his time lighting it. "Here's what I think happened. Isaac found out about the copper, tried to keep it secret, but needed money for his medical debts. So he sold me land he didn't own, hoping to buy time to figure something out. But then he died, leaving you with his mess." "That's an interesting theory," Marigold said. "It's more than a theory." Walton blew smoke into the cold air. "You see, I have friends in the surveyor's office. I know exactly what's under this land. The question is, do we do this the easy way or the hard way?" "What's the easy way?" Abraham asked. "You sign over the entire ranch to me. In exchange, I forget about the fraud, forget about pressing charges that would see you in prison, and give you enough money to start over somewhere else. Say $500. This ranch is worth 10 times that, even without the copper." "Not to a man in prison, it isn't." Walton's friendly mask slipped a bit. That's where you're headed if you don't take my offer. Fraud, theft, conspiracy, Isaac may be beyond justice, but you're not. You'd need proof, Marigold said. More than just your word against ours. Walton gestured to one of his men who produced a leather portfolio. Bills of sale with Isaac's signature, dated before he had any legal claim to that land, witnessed and notarized. He smiled at Abraham's stricken expression. Oh yes, your brother was quite thorough in his desperation. Abraham felt the world tilting. Those could be forged. Could be. But are they? Can you afford to bet your freedom on it? Walton stepped closer. Take the deal, Abraham. It's more than generous, considering. We need time to consider, Marigold said. Of course. You have until Thursday, as originally stated. Walton mounted his horse. But just so we're clear, if you're thinking of running, don't. I have men watching the roads. If you're thinking of fighting well, he gestured to his hired guns. These gentlemen are very good at what they do, and if you're thinking the sheriff will help, remember he's conveniently absent until this is all over. As they started to ride away, one of the gunmen, a scar-faced man with dead eyes, turned back. That's a nice barn you got there. Be a shame if something happened to it. Fire spreads quick in dry weather. After they left, Abraham slumped against the porch rail. We're finished. He's got us cornered every which way. He's got us boxed, Marigold corrected. There's a difference. What difference? Boxes have sides, tops, bottoms. Multiple ways out if you're willing to think in 3 dimensions. She walked back into the house. Come on, we have work to do. She led him to the kitchen table, now covered with the materials she'd gathered: wire, bottles, oil, and other things Abraham didn't recognize. What is all this surprises? She began working with the wire, her large hands surprisingly delicate. Your brother ever tell you about the range wars in Wyoming? Some. Cattlemen against homesteaders. I was there. Not on either side, hired to protect a family that wanted no part of the fighting. Learned a lot about how small forces can hold off larger ones. She held up a bottle filled with oil and cloth. Also learned that men who fight for money aren't as committed as men who fight for home. You're talking about actually fighting them. I'm talking about being ready to fight. There's a difference. Sometimes being ready is enough to prevent the need. They worked through the evening, Marigold teaching Abraham how to create what she called discouragement devices. Not quite weapons, but tools that could make attacking them costly. As they worked, she told him stories of other fights, other stands against seemingly impossible odds. The key, she said, wrapping wire around a tree branch, is to make them doubt, make them wonder if what they're being paid is worth what it might cost them. And if they don't doubt, then we make the cost real. That night, neither of them slept much. Abraham found himself checking and rechecking his rifle, while Marigold sat by the window watching the darkness. Around midnight, she spoke softly. Your brother talked about you constantly those last weeks, said you were the better man, the one who deserved the ranch. Isaac was dying. People say things when they're dying. They say true things. The politeness gets burned away. She shifted slightly. He said you never knew how strong you were because you'd never been tested properly. Said you had iron in you just buried deep. Isaac always saw what he wanted to see in people. Maybe. Or maybe he saw what was actually there waiting for the right moment to surface. Wednesday dawned gray and windless, the sky pressing down like a weight. They spent the morning setting up Marigold surprises around the property tripwires that would sound alerts, oil-soaked patches that could be lit quickly. Strategic positions where one person could hold off several. It's not about winning, Marigold explained as they worked. It's about making winning too expensive. Around noon, they saw riders approaching again, but this time it was just 2 Mary Chen and, surprisingly, Tom Morrison from the general store. We've come to help, Mary said without preamble. Abraham blinked. Help how? Tom dismounted, revealing a shotgun in his saddle scabbard. Not all of us in town are in Walton's pocket. Some of us remember when this valley was about neighbors helping neighbors. Isaac helped me stock my store when I first opened, Tom continued. Gave me credit when no bank would. I haven't forgotten. And there are others, Mary added. Not many, but some. The minister, for one. Jake's spreading the word carefully to those who might stand with you. This isn't your fight, Abraham said. Isn't it? Mary's usually gentle expression was stern. Walton takes your ranch through force and fraud. Who's next? Tom's store? that sits on that nice corner lot. My boarding house. She's right, Tom said. Walton's been squeezing folks for years, but it's been slow legal seeming. This is different. This is him showing he'll take what he wants, however he wants. If he gets away with it, then none of us are safe, Mary finished. Marigold had been silent through this exchange, but now she spoke. How many will stand with us? When push comes to shove, maybe 6, 7. Not enough to match Walton's guns, but enough to witness, Marigold said. Enough to make it public, not some private execution. That's what we figured, Tom agreed. Walton can explain away violence against 2 people defending stolen land. Harder to explain shooting up half the town's honest citizens. They spent the afternoon coordinating planning contingencies. As the sun began to sink, their allies departed with promises to return Thursday morning. Abraham watched them go with mixed feelings, gratitude for their support, guilt for endangering them. They're taking a big risk, he said. They're taking a stand, Marigold corrected. There's a difference between risk and standing for something. That evening, as they prepared what might be their last meal in the cabin, Abraham found himself studying Marigold. In the lamplight, her scars seemed to tell stories, each line a moment of violence survived, each mark a choice to keep fighting. Can I ask you something? He said. She looked up from her plate. Go ahead. Why do you really stay and don't say because of a promise? People break promises all the time. Marigold was quiet for a long moment. You ever feel like you're looking for something, but you don't know what it is? Just know that you'll recognize it when you find it. Yes. I've been looking my whole life, for a place maybe, or a purpose, or just, she paused, searching for words. Just a spot where my particular kind of strange makes sense. Isaac saw that in me somehow, said his brother would understand because he was looking for something too. What am I looking for? A reason to be the man you're capable of being instead of the man you've settled for being. Before Abraham could respond, they heard it, the sound of breaking glass from the barn. They were both on their feet instantly, weapons in hand. Stay here, Marigold said, but Abraham was already following her out the door. The barn was on fire. Flames licked up the eastern wall, spreading quickly through the dry wood. Their horses were screaming, trapped in their stalls. Without thinking, Abraham ran toward the inferno, Marigold right behind him. They worked frantically, leading the terrified animals out one by one. The smoke was thick, choking, but they kept going. Abraham's eyes streamed tears. His lungs burned, but he could hear Tempest still trapped in the back stall. I've got him, Marigold shouted, disappearing into the smoke. Abraham got Buttercup out, then went back for the equipment, saddles, tools, anything they could save. The heat was incredible, boards falling from above in showers of sparks. Abraham, get out, Marigold's voice urgent. He grabbed what he could and stumbled out just as a section of roof collapsed. Marigold emerged seconds later, leading Tempest, her shirt singed and smoking. They stood watching their barn burn, the flames painting the night orange and angry. In the distance, Abraham could see riders watching from the ridge, Walton's men making sure their message was received. So much for Thursday, Abraham said bitterly. Marigold's expression was carved from stone. They just made a mistake. How do you figure? They showed their hand, showed their impatience, scared maybe, and they gave us something. What? A reason to stop playing defensive. She turned to him, and in the firelight, Abraham saw something that should have terrified him, but instead felt like comfort, absolute, unwavering determination. They want a war fine, but it won't be the kind they're expecting. As the barn collapsed into itself, sending sparks spiraling into the dark sky, Abraham felt something shift inside him. The iron Isaac had spoken of, maybe, or just the simple realization that he had nothing left to lose except everything. What do you need me to do? He asked. Marigold smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. First, we save what we can from the fire. Then we make them regret ever coming to this valley. They worked through the night, pulling what they could from the edges of the fire, setting up temporary shelter for the horses, preparing for what Thursday would bring. As dawn approached, Abraham found himself looking at the smoldering ruins of the barn and thinking not of loss but of possibility. Isaac was right about you, Marigold said, appearing beside him with 2 cups of coffee. How's that? You've got iron in you, just needed the right fire to forge it. Abraham took the coffee, noting how his hands didn't shake despite everything. What about you? What are you made of? Something harder than iron, she said quietly. Something that's been through enough fires that one more doesn't matter. As the sun rose over the valley, they could see dust on the road, their allies coming as promised. Tom Morrison, Mary Chen, the minister, young Jake, and 3 others Abraham recognized as small farmers who'd also felt Walton's pressure. "You still standing?" Tom called out, then saw the barn. "Jesus Christ." "Language, Tom," the minister said mildly, though his own face was grim. "They couldn't wait," Abraham said. "Wanted to soften us up." "Looks like they failed," Mary observed, noting Abraham and Marigold's determined expressions. "What's the plan?" Marigold looked at the gathered townspeople, then at the ruins of the barn, then at the road where Walton would come from. "The plan," she said, "is to make history, the kind they'll talk about in this valley for generations, the day regular folks stood up and said, 'Enough!'" She began outlining her strategy, and Abraham watched their allies' faces transform from fear to determination. Whatever happened next, they wouldn't face it alone. As the morning grew warmer and the time of reckoning approached, Abraham found himself thinking of Isaac. His brother had set all this in motion through desperation, through hope, through failure and foresight combined. He'd brought Marigold here knowing somehow that she was what Abraham would need. "Thank you, brother," Abraham whispered to the wind, "for everything, even the mess." The sound of approaching horses cut through the morning air. Many horses. Walton was coming, and with him the moment that would define everything that came after. The dust cloud grew larger, and with it came the thunder of hooves that seemed to shake the very ground. Abraham counted 12 riders, maybe more. Walton had brought an army. "More than we expected," Tom Morrison said quietly, his knuckles white on his shotgun. "Numbers don't matter as much as you think," Marigold said, checking her rifle one last time. "Position yourselves like we discussed. Remember, we're not trying to win a gunfight, we're trying to prevent one." The townspeople spread out, some taking position near the cabin, others by the well, the minister standing prominently in the open with his Bible as if conducting a service. It was theater, Abraham realized, but theater with deadly stakes. Walton's group rode up to the boundary marker, stopping just short of the property line. The man himself sat his horse like a king, surveying conquered territory, his silver hair gleaming in the morning sun. His hired guns flanked him, hands resting on their weapons with practiced ease. "Quite a gathering," Walton called out, his voice carrying across the distance. "Having a prayer meeting, Reverend." "Bearing witness," the minister replied calmly. "As is our Christian duty." Walton's smile was razor thin. "Witness to what exactly? To whatever happens here today," Mary Chen said, stepping forward. "The whole town will know." "The town already knows that Abraham Callahan's brother was a thief and a fraud," Walton said. "I'm simply collecting what's owed." "With 12 armed men?" Tom Morrison asked. "Seems excessive for a legal debt collection." "These are dangerous times. A man can't be too careful." Walton's eyes found Marigold. "Especially with unknown elements around. Speaking of which, Miss Marigold, I did some checking on you. Interesting history. Wanted in Wyoming for assault. Colorado, too." "Those charges were dropped," Marigold said evenly, "after witnesses mysteriously disappeared or changed their stories. You leave quite a trail of violence behind you." "I leave a trail of people who learn not to push those who push back harder." Walton dismounted his men, following suit. The scar-faced gunman from before whispered something to Hutchins, who grinned unpleasantly. "Here's how this is going to work," Walton said, pulling out a document. "Abraham signs this deed transfer, and everyone goes home. Nobody gets hurt. Nobody goes to prison." "And if I don't?" Abraham asked, surprised by how steady his own voice sounded. "Then things get unpleasant. My men might have to search the property for stolen goods, thoroughly. Buildings might get damaged in the process. People might get hurt resisting lawful search." He paused meaningfully. "More buildings might catch fire. Like the barn." Abraham felt anger rising hot and clarifying. "You already played that card. That was an accident. Sparks from a campfire carried on the wind. These things happen." Walton's expression hardened. Sign the papers, Abraham. Don't make this worse than it needs to be. Marigold moved then, not threatening, just shifting position, so she stood between Walton and Abraham. The movement drew every gun hand in Walton's group. You know what I find interesting, she said conversationally. You came here with all these men, all these guns for what you claim is a simple legal matter. Makes a person wonder what you're really afraid of. I'm not afraid of anything. No, then why burn the barn at night like cowards? Why wait until the sheriff's gone? Why bring hired killers to collect a debt? She took a step forward, and several of Walton's men tensed. I'll tell you why. Because you know you're stealing and you need violence to make the theft look legitimate. Careful, Walton warned. Slander's also a crime. Truth isn't slander. Abraham pulled out the geological survey from his jacket. We know about the copper, Walton. We know why you really want this land. Walton's face went still. Where did you get that? Isaac wasn't as foolish as you thought. He kept records. Insurance. Abraham held up the document. This survey predates any land sale, which means Isaac knew exactly what he was doing when he sold you land he didn't own. He was preventing you from getting the mineral rights. Even more reason for you to sign. Your brother committed deliberate fraud. That's prison time for sure. Maybe, Mary Chen said, producing her own set of papers. Or maybe we talk about the other properties you've acquired through similar means. I've been keeping records too, Mr. Walton. Amazing what people say in my boarding house when they think the Chinese woman doesn't understand English. Walton's composure cracked slightly. You're all making a serious mistake. The only mistake what the minister said would be letting you continue to prey on this community. The tension stretched taut as a wire. Abraham could feel it building, violence gathering like storm clouds. One wrong word, one twitchy finger, and blood would spill. That's when they heard it, a sound from the old mine shaft echoing across the property, a rhythmic banging like metal on stone, growing louder. What the hell is that? Hutchins asked, hand going to his gun. The banging continued, then stopped. In the silence that followed, a voice carried from near the mine, young Jake Morrison's voice high and clear. Mr. Walton, there's something here you need to see. Everyone turned toward the mine. Jake stood at its entrance, waving urgently. It's a trap, the scar-faced gunman said. Maybe, Walton said. But we're all going to walk over there together and see what the boys found, slowly, peacefully. They moved as a group toward the mine, tension crackling between them like invisible lightning. As they approached, Jake disappeared inside the entrance. Moments later, he emerged supporting someone. It was a man, clothes torn and dirty, face haggard with exhaustion, but Abraham recognized him. Samuel Josiah Mills, the man Isaac had supposedly sold the land to. Sam, Walton said, genuine surprise in his voice. What are you doing here? Mills looked at Walton with hollow eyes. Hiding. From you. I don't understand. Sure you do. Mills's voice was cracked weak. You paid me to buy that land from Isaac Callahan, said it was a simple business arrangement. But when I tried to back out when I grew a conscience, your men came for me. I've been hiding in these hills for 2 weeks. You're confused, Walton said smoothly. The heat, the exhaustion. I kept the telegrams back, Mills interrupted. Your instructions, the threats when I wanted out. They're hidden safe. If something happens to me, they go to the federal marshal in Helena. The silence was deafening. Walton's men looked uncertain now, exchanging glances. Hired guns were one thing, but federal marshals were another matter entirely. He's lying, Walton said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Mills pulled out a crumpled telegram. This one's particularly interesting, where you explicitly tell me to forge Isaac's signature if necessary. Abraham felt the world shift. You mean Isaac never sold anything? Oh, he discussed it with me, Mills said. Was desperate for money for his medical debts, but when he learned what Walton really wanted, he refused. Said he'd die before he let Walton steal his brother's inheritance. Mills looked at Abraham. Looks like he kept that promise. You son of a bitch, Marigold said softly to Walton. You tried to frame a dying man. Walton's hand moved toward his gun, but Marigold was faster. Not drawing, just moving her hand to her weapon in a way that made his freeze. I wouldn't, she said quietly. Your men are good, but they're not dying for you good. Are you boys? The scar-faced gunman spoke up. We signed on for legal debt collection, Walton, not federal crimes. Nothing's changed, Walton insisted. This man's clearly delusional. Delusional enough to have proof, Tom Morrison said. Sam, we need to get you to the sheriff. Sheriff's conveniently gone, Mills said bitterly. Walton made sure of that. Then we take you to the federal marshal ourselves, Mary Chen said. My wagon's ready. Walton's control finally snapped. You're not taking him anywhere. He drew his gun, pointing it at Mills. The sound of multiple weapons cocking filled the air. But it wasn't just Walton's men the townspeople had raised their weapons too. And surprisingly, not all of Walton's hired guns were pointing at Abraham's group. This has gone too far, Walton, Hutchins said, his weapon still holstered. I don't gun down witnesses for anybody. You work for me. Not anymore. Hutchins looked at the other hired men. I'm riding out. Anyone else who wants to avoid a federal noose should do the same. 3 of the hired guns immediately holstered their weapons and moved toward their horses. Others hesitated, caught between pay and principle. You cowards, Walton screamed. I own this valley. You own nothing, Abraham said, finding his voice. You're just a thief who got caught. Walton swung his gun toward Abraham, and time seemed to slow. Abraham saw Marigold moving, saw Tom Morrison raising his shotgun, saw everything that was about to happen in a moment of terrible clarity. But it was Mills who acted first. Weak as he was, he lunged at Walton, grabbing his gun arm. The weapon fired the shot going wild, and then everyone was moving at once. Marigold crossed the distance to Walton in 2 strides, her fist connecting with his jaw with a sound like a hammer hitting meat. He went down hard, the gun spinning from his grip. The scar-faced gunman went for his weapon, but the minister of all people was there with his Bible, bringing it down on the man's wrist with surprising force. Ecclesiastes says there's a time for peace and a time for war, he said calmly. One of Walton's remaining men fired the bullet, whining past Abraham's ear. Abraham raised his rifle sighted and squeezed the trigger. The man spun and fell, clutching his shoulder. Enough! Marigold's voice boomed across the chaos. She stood over Walton's prone form, her rifle aimed at the remaining hired guns. Anyone else want to bleed for this man's greed? The hired guns looked at their fallen employer, at their wounded companion, at the determined faces of the townspeople. One by one they raised their hands. Smart choice, Marigold said. Now get him and get out. She nudged Walton with her boot. You hear me? Take your boss and ride. Don't come back. Walton struggled to his feet, blood streaming from his nose. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Mary Chen said. We have Mills' testimony. We have the documents. We have witnesses. You're finished in this valley, Mr. Walton. I have friends, influence, money. Had to. Abraham corrected. Past tense. Once word gets out about this, about what you tried to do, who's going to trust you? Who's going to do business with you? Walton looked around wildly, seeking support, finding none. Even his remaining men wouldn't meet his eyes. You're nothing special, Marigold told him. Just another bully who found out that sometimes people push back. They watched as Walton's men helped him onto his horse, the wounded gunman draped over his saddle. As they prepared to ride out, Walton turned back one last time. You think you've won? This land will destroy you like it destroyed your brother. The copper's there, but it's too deep, too expensive to extract. You'll go broke trying just like Isaac did. Maybe, Abraham said, but it'll be our choice to make, our land to fail or succeed on. Walton's eyes narrowed. You and your freak woman. Abraham felt Marigold tense beside him, but he put a hand on her arm. Yes, ours. My wife and I will manage just fine. The words came out naturally without thought, and Abraham felt Marigold's surprised look. But she said nothing, just stood beside him as they watched Walton and his men ride away. After they were gone, a strange silence fell over the group. Then Jake Morrison let out a whoop that echoed across the valley. We did it! We actually did it! We did, Tom Morrison said, though he was shaking slightly. Christ almighty, we actually faced down Walton. Language, Tom. the minister said again, though he was smiling. Mills collapsed, then the adrenaline finally leaving him. They caught him before he hit the ground, and Mary Chen immediately took charge, checking him over with practiced efficiency. He needs rest food water, she said. I'll take him to town, get him proper care. And then to the federal marshal, Tom added. Make sure Walton can't wriggle out of this. As the townspeople prepared to leave with Mills, they each stopped to shake Abraham's hand to nod respectfully to Marigold. The minister paused longest. What you did today, he said to Marigold, standing up for what's right. That's God's work regardless of what anyone says about propriety. I'm not a godly woman, Reverend. Perhaps not, but you're a righteous one. There's a difference, and both have their place. After everyone left, Abraham and Marigold stood alone among the evidence of the morning's violence, scattered shells, blood on the ground, the acrid smell of gunpowder still lingering. You called me your wife, Marigold said finally. I did. Why? Abraham considered the question. Because it felt right. Because Walton needed to know you weren't going anywhere. Because... He paused, searching for words. Because somewhere between you showing up at my door and standing beside me against Walton, it became true in every way that matters. I'm not an easy woman to be married to, even in pretense. I'm not an easy man to be married to in reality. Isaac could have told you that I'm stubborn, too careful, too set in my ways. You're also brave when it counts, Marigold said. You shot that man, to protect us. I shot him in the shoulder, to stop him. Most men would have aimed for the heart. I'm not most men. No, Marigold agreed. You're not. They walked back to the cabin, the morning's adrenaline fading into exhaustion. The burned barn was a black scar on the land still smoking in places. We'll need to rebuild, Abraham said. We will. Bigger this time. Better. With what money, Walton was right about one thing: we're nearly broke. Marigold pulled something from her pocket, a leather pouch that jingled. Remember those men who rode off first, Hutchins, and the others they left this? Abraham opened it to find gold coins, maybe $300 worth. Why, conscience money maybe, or payment for not having to kill anyone. Does it matter? I suppose not. Abraham hefted the pouch. It's enough to get through winter at least. And come spring we'll figure out the rest. Marigold looked at the ruins of the barn. Maybe we don't dig for copper. Maybe we just ranch like you and Isaac always did. Maybe. Abraham found himself moving closer to her, drawn by something he couldn't name. Marigold, what you said before about looking for something. Yes. I think maybe I found it. Not the ranch, not the land, but this. Standing with someone against the world. Having someone who sees me not as I've been, but as I could be. Marigold was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something Abraham had never seen her do. She showed uncertainty. I don't know how to be what you're suggesting, she said softly. I've been alone so long I don't know how to be otherwise. Neither do I. Isaac was my only family, my only real connection. Abraham took a breath. Maybe we can learn together. That's a dangerous proposition, Abraham Callahan. Everything about you has been dangerous from the moment you arrived. Why stop now? That surprised a laugh out of her, not the grinding sound from before, but something lighter, almost musical. You know what Isaac told me about you, she said. He said you were the kind of man who, once he made a decision, never wavered, said it was both your strength and weakness. And you, what kind of woman are you? The kind who's been running so long she forgot she was looking for a place to stop. She turned to face him fully. Maybe I found it. Before Abraham could respond, they heard horses approaching again, both tensed hands going to weapons, but it was Tom Morrison and Jake returning with a wagon. Figured you'd need supplies, Tom called out. The whole town's talking about what happened. You're heroes. We're just people who didn't want to lose our home, Abraham said. Sometimes that's what heroes are, Jake said eagerly. Can Miss Marigold teach me to shoot like she does? Absolutely not. Tom and Marigold said simultaneously, then looked at each other in surprise. Your mother would skin me alive, Tom told his son. But we brought lumber for the barn. Others are coming too. Reverend's organizing a barn raising for tomorrow. We can't pay. Abraham started. "Nobody's asking you to. This is what communities do. We help each other." Tom's expression grew serious. "Besides, you stood up to Walton for all of us. Time we return the favor." As Tom and Jake unloaded supplies, more wagons appeared on the road. Soon the property was full of neighbors. Some Abraham knew well, others he'd barely spoken to. They brought wood nails, tools, food. The women set up cooking stations while the men began clearing the burned debris. Abraham found himself overwhelmed by the generosity, standing somewhat apart, unsure how to process it all. Marigold appeared beside him. "Not used to accepting help?" she asked. "Not used to having it offered?" "Isaac was wrong about one thing," she said, watching the community work. "You were already the man you needed to be. You just needed the right moment to show it." As the sun climbed higher, the sound of hammers and saws filled the air. The minister said a blessing over the work, and Mary Chen organized the food distribution with military efficiency. Children ran between the workers carrying water and messages. "It's like a celebration," Abraham said wonderingly. "It is a celebration," Marigold corrected. "The valley's free of Walton. People can breathe again." By evening, the foundation of a new barn was laid bigger and better positioned than the old one. As folks began to leave, each stopped to shake hands to offer continued support. Mrs. Forrester even approached looking somewhat chagrined. "I owe you an apology," she said stiffly. "I misjudged the situation." "No apology needed," Abraham said. Nevertheless, she looked at Marigold. "The women's auxiliary meets Thursdays. You'd be welcome." After she left, Marigold looked stunned. "Did she just invite me to join proper society?" "I believe she did." I don't know whether to be honored or terrified. As the last wagon disappeared into the dusk, Abraham and Marigold sat on the porch steps exhausted but oddly content. The framework of the new barn stood skeletal against the darkening sky, a promise of things to come. "We still have problems," Abraham said. "Money the ranch winter coming." "We do," Marigold agreed. "But there are problems now. No one trying to steal them from us." "Ours," Abraham repeated, tasting the word. "I like the sound of that. Even if I am a giant scarred woman with a violent past, especially then, a normal woman would never have stayed to fight." Marigold was quiet for a moment. "There's something I should tell you about why I was really wanted in Wyoming." Abraham waited. "There was a man, powerful like Walton. He wanted things. When I refused, he tried to take them anyway. I stopped him, permanently." "Good," Abraham said simply. "That's all. Just good." "What else should I say? That you should have let him. That you should have been weaker, smaller, less capable of defending yourself." Abraham shook his head. "You are who you are because of what you've survived. I wouldn't change any of it." "You really mean that?" "I've never meant anything more." In the distance, a wolf howled, and others answered. The sound should have been ominous, but somehow it felt like approval, like the wild things of the valley acknowledging their kinship with the woman beside him. "Isaac left me a letter," Marigold said suddenly, "to give to you after Walton was dealt with." She pulled out an envelope worn from carrying. Abraham recognized his brother's handwriting. "Why didn't you—" "He said to wait until you didn't need it anymore, until you'd already found what he wanted to tell you." Abraham opened the letter with trembling fingers. "Brother, if you're reading this, then Marigold kept her promise and Walton's been dealt with. More importantly, if you're reading this, you've discovered what I knew the moment I met her, that she's exactly what you need and you're exactly what she needs. Not because you're weak and need protection, but because you're strong and need someone who matches that strength. She's rough, strange, and absolutely magnificent, like the land itself, like you when you let yourself be. Don't let her go, Abraham, and don't let yourself go either. Be the man I always knew you were. Be happy. That's all I ever wanted for you. Isaac." Abraham read it twice, then handed it to Marigold. She read it slowly, her expression unreadable. "He saw us clearly," she said finally. "He saw possibilities. Same thing sometimes." As full dark settled over the valley, they remained on the porch, not touching, but close enough to feel each other's warmth. The temporary shelters for the horses were quiet, the animals fed and settled. Tomorrow would bring more work on the barn, more challenges to face. I should tell you, Marigold said, I don't know anything about being a wife, real or pretend. And I know nothing about being a husband, but I know about being partners. Isaac and I were that for 15 years. And now I'd like to try it with you. If you're willing. Marigold stood stretching muscles sore from the day's violence and work. I should sleep. Tomorrow will be long. Will you stay in the house tonight? Isaac's room is… Yes, she said simply. I'll stay. As she walked inside, Abraham remained on the porch a moment longer, looking at the stars beginning to emerge. The same stars Isaac had looked at, planning and worrying and hoping. Thank you, brother, he said to the night. For everything, even her, especially her. Inside, he found Marigold had built up the fire and was making coffee despite the late hour. Couldn't sleep anyway, she explained. Too much in my head. They sat at the table, the same table where she'd first announced herself as his wife, and drank coffee in companionable silence. Finally, Marigold spoke. That moment today when Walton drew his gun, you weren't afraid. I was terrified. But you didn't show it, didn't run. Neither did you. I've had practice. You haven't. Abraham considered this. Maybe I have just different kinds. Every day after our parents died, keeping the ranch going. Every winter we barely survived. Every time Isaac got sick. Fear and I are old acquaintances. But this was different. This was violence. Yes. And I found I could face that too with the right reason. He met her eyes. With the right person beside me. Don't make me into something I'm not, Abraham. I'm not a romantic figure. I'm not soft or gentle or any of the things a wife should be. I don't want soft or gentle. I want strong and true. I want someone who sees a fight worth having and doesn't back down. And if there are no more fights, if life becomes ordinary, then we'll face ordinary together, though somehow I doubt any life with you could be truly ordinary. Marigold smiled at that. You may have a point. They talked through the night, sharing stories of their pasts. Abraham told her about the war, about finding his parents dead from fever, about the early years when he and Isaac nearly starved, trying to make the ranch work. Marigold told him about growing up different, about the violence that seemed to follow her, about the long roads between towns where no one knew her name. I've been Marigold Smith, Marigold Jones, Marigold Brown, she said. Never belonged to any name long enough for it to matter. And now, now? She considered. Marigold Callahan has a nice sound to it. It does. Abraham agreed, warmth spreading through his chest. As dawn approached, they heard horses again. This time it was Sheriff Boone returned early from the county seat with a federal marshal in tow. They'd heard about the confrontation and come to investigate. Abraham and Marigold told their story, showed the evidence, introduced them to Mills, who Tom Morrison had brought back. The marshal, a severe man named Davidson, took it all in with professional interest. Walton's already fled the county, Sheriff Boone reported. His property's been abandoned. Word is he's heading for California. Good riddance, the marshal said. Though I'll put out word to watch for him. Men like that don't change, just find new places to cause trouble. After the lawmen left, Abraham and Marigold stood looking at the sunrise painting the valley gold. So it's really over, Abraham said. This part is. The rest is just beginning. The rest, life, the ranch, us. She paused. If there is an us. Abraham reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His hand found hers, massive and scarred and perfect. There's an us, he said firmly. However you want to define it. I want to define it as real, she said quietly. Not pretense, not convenience. Real. Then real it is. As the sun rose fully, warming the frosted ground, neighbors began arriving again for the barn raising. Abraham and Marigold joined them, working side by side, building something new from the ashes of the old. During a break, the minister approached them. I could perform a ceremony, he offered quietly. Make official what everyone already assumes. Abraham looked at Marigold, questioning. She considered, then nodded slowly. Sunday, she said. After the barn's finished. Nothing fancy. Nothing fancy. The minister agreed, smiling. The work continued through the day, the barn taking shape board by board. As Abraham hammered nails and cut wood, he found himself stealing glances at Marigold. She worked with the same focused intensity she brought to everything, but occasionally their eyes would meet, and something would pass between them, understanding, promise, possibility. That evening, as the workers departed with promises to return tomorrow, Mary Chen approached Marigold. "I have something for you," she said, producing a wrapped package, "for Sunday." Marigold opened it carefully, revealing a dress simple but well made in a deep blue that would complement her coloring. "I can't." "You can and you will," Mary said firmly. "Every woman deserves something beautiful for her wedding day." "It won't fit. Nothing ever does." "I took the liberty of guessing your measurements. I'm very good at guessing." Mary smiled. "Try it on tonight. I can make adjustments if needed." After Mary left, Marigold held the dress like it might break or bite or disappear. "I haven't worn a dress since I was 14, pound," she admitted. "You don't have to." "I want to." She looked at him with something vulnerable in her eyes. "I want to do this right. For you. For us. You could wear your everyday clothes and it would be right. You could wear a grain sack and it would be right." Abraham Callahan, are you saying you want to marry a woman in a grain sack? I'm saying I want to marry you regardless of what you're wearing. Good answer. The dress fit perfectly, as Mary Chen had known it would. Marigold stood before the small mirror in Isaac's room, her room now, turning slowly, examining this stranger in blue fabric who somehow wore her face. "You look—" Abraham stopped in the doorway, words failing him. "Ridiculous," she supplied, though her tone was more vulnerable than bitter. "Beautiful, powerful. Like yourself, just more. How can I look like myself when I haven't looked like this in 20 years? Abraham entered the room, slowly approaching her like one might approach a spooked horse. "Because you're still you, still tall, still strong, still the woman who faced down Walton. Just in a dress. The dress doesn't make me feel like that woman." "Then take it off. Wear what makes you feel like yourself." Marigold looked at him in the mirror. "You'd really be fine with that. Your bride in pants and boots." "I'd be fine with my bride however she chooses to present herself, but Marigold—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes we wear things not for ourselves, but for what they represent. That dress isn't about making you feminine or proper. It's about marking an occasion as special, different from ordinary days." She considered this, running her hands down the fabric. "Mary went to a lot of trouble." "She did, but that's not a reason to wear it if you don't want to." "I want to," Marigold said quietly. "Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." A knock at the door interrupted them. Tom Morrison's voice called out, "Abraham? We got a problem." They found Tom on the porch with Sheriff Boone and two strangers, hard-looking men with badges. "These are Deputies Carlson and Reeves from Butte," Boone said. "They're looking for someone." The taller Deputy Carlson pulled out a wanted poster. Marigold's face stared back at them, though younger, less scarred. The reward was substantial, $500. "Margaret Olson," Carlson read. "Wanted for murder in Wyoming. Goes by Marigold. 6 feet 2 inches, dark hair, numerous scars." He looked up at Marigold, who had changed back into her regular clothes. "Fits the description perfectly." "That case was dismissed," Abraham said. "The charges dropped." "Not dropped. Suspended pending further investigation, which is now concluded." Reeves' hand rested on his pistol. "She needs to come with us." "The hell she does," Tom Morrison said. "This woman just helped save our town from Walton." "That's not our concern," Carlson said. "We have a warrant." Sheriff Boone looked uncomfortable. "Boys, maybe we can work something out. The federal marshal was just here, didn't say anything about any warrants." "Federal marshal doesn't handle state matters," Reeves said. "This is Wyoming business." "Then why are Montana deputies handling it?" Marigold asked calmly. "Professional courtesy. Wyoming asked us to pick you up if you surfaced." Carlson's eyes were cold. "The man you killed was important. His family wants justice. His family wants revenge, Marigold corrected. There's a difference. Tell it to the judge in Wyoming. Abraham stepped forward. You're not taking her anywhere. She's about to be my wife. This is our land, our home. Your feelings don't matter here, Reeves said. Law's the law. Whose law? Mary Chen had arrived along with the minister and several others who'd been working on the barn. The law that let powerful men like Walton steal for years, or the law that protects women from assault? We don't know the details of the case, Carlson admitted, just that there's a warrant. I know the details, Marigold said quietly. Everyone turned to her. Harold Brennan, son of a judge-nephew of a senator, used to taking what he wanted. He wanted me. I said no. He didn't accept that answer. So you killed him. So I defended myself. He had 60 pounds on me and a knife. I had my hands and the will to survive. She looked at the deputies steadily. I'm not sorry he's dead. I'm only sorry his family has enough money to keep sending men like you after me. That's a confession, Reeves said, reaching for his shackles. The click of multiple weapons cocking stopped him. The townspeople had armed themselves, forming a circle around Marigold. You boys might want to reconsider, Tom Morrison said mildly, his shotgun aimed at the ground but ready. You're threatening deputies. Carlson's voice rose. That's a hanging offense. We're protecting a member of our community, the minister said. There's no threat here, just a strong suggestion that you verify your warrant is still valid before trying to execute it. Sheriff Boone cleared his throat. I could telegram Wyoming, confirm the warrant's still good. Take a day, maybe two. We don't have, Reeves started. You don't have a choice, Boone interrupted. I'm still sheriff here and I say we verify before anybody goes anywhere. Unless you want to try to take her by force against the wishes of the entire town. The deputies looked around at the determined faces, the ready weapons. Carlson spat on the ground. Fine. 2 days. But we're staying here to make sure she doesn't run. She won't run, Abraham said firmly. We're getting married Sunday. She'll be here. After the deputies left to find lodging, the gathered townspeople slowly dispersed, but not before each offered support to Marigold. She accepted their words with her usual stoicism, but Abraham could see the strain in her eyes. That night they sat by the fire, the weight of the situation pressing down on them. You should run, Abraham said finally. Tonight. Take Tempest and whatever money we have. No. Marigold, be practical. If that warrant's real, if I run now, I'll always be running, and you'll be harboring a fugitive. They'll take the ranch, put you in prison. She stared into the flames. I won't do that to you. Oh, I don't care about the ranch. Yes, you do, and you should. It's your legacy, your life's work. She turned to him. Besides, I made a promise. To Isaac. To you. To myself. I'm done running. Even if it means hanging, even then. She paused. Though I'd prefer to avoid that outcome. Abraham moved closer to her, taking her hand. There has to be something we can do. Some legal maneuver. Maybe Sheriff Boone's telegram might help, or maybe the Brennan family will finally decide I've been punished enough by years of running. She squeezed his hand. Or maybe Sunday I become Marigold Callahan and disappear entirely. Marriage doesn't erase warrants. No, but it changes things. Makes it harder to just disappear someone. Wives have husbands who ask questions, demand answers. They sat in silence for a while, hands clasped, watching the fire die to embers. I should tell you, Marigold said softly. If they take me, don't wait. Find someone else. Someone easier. There is no one else. There never will be. Abraham, no. You don't get to prepare me for losing you. We're going to fight this, and we're going to win, and Sunday, you're going to wear that blue dress or your regular clothes or whatever you damn well please, and we're going to get married. That's the only outcome I'm accepting. Marigold turned to look at him fully. You really are Isaac's brother, stubborn as stone when you set your mind. Is that a bad thing? Right now, it's the best thing. The next day, Friday, brought unexpected hope. Sheriff Boone received a telegram from Wyoming, but it wasn't what anyone expected. The warrant had been withdrawn a year ago after new evidence surfaced about Harold Brennan's pattern of assault. 3 other women had come forward with similar stories. "So I'm free?" Marigold asked, reading the telegram for the 3rd time. "Looks like it," Boone said. "The deputies won't like it, but law's the law, as they said." But when they went to inform Carlson and Reeves, they found the deputies had received their own telegram from the Brennan family's lawyer. They were offering a private bounty now $5,000 for Marigold's capture, no questions asked. "That's not legal," Abraham protested. "It's not illegal either," Carlson said with a cold smile. "She's not wanted by the law, but nothing stops private citizens from making private offers for information about someone's whereabouts." "That's a bounty for kidnapping," Tom Morrison said angrily. "Prove it," Reeves challenged. "We're just here to observe. If Miss Olson happens to travel to Wyoming of her own accord and happens to meet with the Brennan family, well, that's her choice." "You bastards." Abraham started forward, but Marigold caught his arm. "They're trying to provoke us," she said quietly. "Don't give them the excuse." The deputies left, but their presence lingered like a bad smell. Word of the bounty spread through town, and suddenly Marigold couldn't go anywhere without worried looks following her. $5,000 is a lot of money, she said that evening, trying for lightness. "Maybe you should turn me in yourself. Could save the ranch with that." "That's not funny." "It's a little funny," but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Abraham, maybe we should postpone the wedding until this is resolved." "This may never be resolved. The Brennans have money and grudges. They could keep this up forever." He took her face in his hands gently. "I don't want to wait for someday. I want to marry you Sunday bounty or no bounty." "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Saturday dawned bright and cold. The barn was nearly complete, just finishing touches remaining. The whole town seemed to turn out for the final push, and by afternoon it stood complete, larger and finer than the original. "It's beautiful," Abraham said, standing back to admire it. "It's functional," Marigold corrected, but she was smiling. "Though I admit they did good work." The minister approached them. "Everything's ready for tomorrow, noon, if that suits." "It suits," Abraham said. That evening, Mary Chen arrived with several other women from town. "Tradition," she announced. "The bride spends her last night as an unmarried woman with the women, the groom with the men." "That's ridiculous," Marigold protested. "That's tradition," Mary said firmly. "Come, we have preparations to make." Abraham found himself swept away by Tom Morrison and others to the saloon, where they insisted on buying him drinks and sharing marriage advice of varying usefulness. "The secret," Tom said seriously several whiskeys in, "is to always let her think she's right." "Even when she's wrong?" Jake asked, having snuck into the saloon despite being underage. "Especially then," several men chorused. Meanwhile, at Mary Chen's boarding house, Marigold sat uncomfortably while the women fussed over her hair, her hands, her everything. "I don't need all this," she protested as Mrs. Forrester tried to pin her hair up. "Every bride needs fussing," Mrs. Forrester said firmly. "Even unconventional ones." "Especially unconventional ones," Mary added. "You've been taking care of yourself for so long, let others take care of you for once." "I don't know how." "Then learn," one of the younger women said. "Marriage is about letting someone else in, letting them help carry the load. Abraham's already carrying enough." "And you're not," Mary challenged. "You've been carrying the weight of staying alive in a world that doesn't know what to do with you. Maybe it's time to put some of that weight down." As the evening wore on, Marigold found herself unexpectedly moved by these women's acceptance. They knew what she'd done, and they were here anyway, treating her like any other bride. "Why," she asked finally, "why are you all being so kind?" "Because you stood up for us," Mrs. Forrester said simply. "When Walton threatened everything we'd built here, you stood up. That makes you one of us no matter where you came from or what you've done." Sunday arrived with a dusting of snow transforming the valley into something magical. The church was small, but it seemed the entire town had crammed inside. Abraham stood at the altar in his best suit, the one he'd worn to Isaac's funeral, now repurposed for joy instead of grief. When the doors opened and Marigold entered, a collective gasp went through the congregation. She wore the blue dress, but Mary had worked magic with it, adding touches that emphasized Marigold's height and strength rather than trying to hide them. Her hair was pinned up, revealing the strong line of her neck, the scars she usually kept hidden. She walked alone, no one to give her away, no one to claim that right. But halfway down the aisle, Tom Morrison stood and offered his arm. Then Mary Chen stood and took her other arm. By the time she reached Abraham, half the town was walking with her. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, his voice carrying over the emotion-thick air. "We are gathered here today to witness something extraordinary. Not just a marriage, but a declaration. That love comes in all forms, that strength can be gentle, that two people battered by the world can choose to face it together and be stronger for it." Abraham barely heard the traditional words that followed. He was lost in Marigold's eyes, gray as storm clouds, but warm now present here. "Do you, Abraham, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." The words came out fierce, determined. "Do you, Marigold, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do." Softer, but no less certain. "The rings?" Abraham pulled out his mother's ring, the one he'd kept hidden for 15 years. "It might not fit," he warned quietly. But it did fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for Marigold's hand all along. She produced a ring too, a simple band she must have gotten from Tom's store. "Isaac gave me this," she whispered. "Said to save it for when I found home. You may kiss the bride." Abraham reached up and up to cup Marigold's face, and she bent down to meet him. The kiss was brief, appropriate for public viewing, but it held promises of more of private moments of a future neither had dared imagine. The church erupted in celebration. As they turned to face the congregation as husband and wife, Abraham saw the deputies standing at the back watching with sour expressions. But he also saw the townspeople, close ranks, creating a protective barrier between them and the new couple. The reception was held in the new barn, decorated with winter branches and candles. There was music, Jake Morrison on fiddle, surprisingly talented, and dancing, though Marigold initially refused. "I don't dance," she said. "Neither do I," Abraham admitted. "But maybe we could not dance together." That got a laugh from her, and they attempted a slow, careful dance that was more swaying than anything else. But it felt right, her strength and his determination finding a rhythm that worked. As the afternoon wore on, Abraham noticed the deputies had disappeared. Sheriff Boone confirmed they'd left town. "Gave up?" Abraham asked hopefully. "Doubt it, but they know they can't do anything here, not with the whole town watching." Boone paused. "You two thought about a honeymoon. Might be a good time to disappear for a while." "We're not running," Marigold said firmly. "This is our home." That night alone, finally in their cabin, Abraham and Marigold sat before the fire, still in their wedding clothes. "So we're married," Abraham said somewhat wonderingly. "We are." "What now?" "Now," Marigold considered. "Now we figure out how to be married, how to be partners in truth, not just in crisis." "That might be harder than facing down Walton." "Maybe, but we've got time to figure it out." A knock at the door interrupted them. Abraham opened it to find a stranger, well-dressed, older, with the bearing of authority. "Mr. and Mrs. Callahan." "Yes," Abraham said warily. "My name is James Hartley. I'm a lawyer from Helena." He pulled out a document. "I represent the estate of Harold Brennan." Marigold stood, tension radiating from her. "Come to serve papers. Come to end this." Hartley looked tired. "May I come in?" They let him in, though both remained ready for trouble. Hartley sat at their kitchen table, the same one where so much had happened already. "The Brennan family wants to make you an offer," he said to Marigold. "Sign this document stating you'll never speak publicly about Harold Brennan or what happened, and they'll call off the bounty, cease all pursuit, and pay you $5,000. "Blood money," Marigold said flatly. "Call it what you want. It's an end to running and enough money to secure your future here." "Why?" Abraham asked. "Why now?" "Because Harold's sister is getting married to a senator's son. This situation threatens that union. The family wants it resolved quietly. They want me silenced. They want you gone from their lives. This accomplishes that." Marigold looked at Abraham, who nodded slightly. "We need to talk privately." Hartley stood. "I'll be at the boarding house until morning. Think about it. This offer won't come again." After he left, Abraham and Marigold sat in silence. "It's not justice," Marigold said finally. No, but it's freedom and security. It's admitting I did something wrong. It's choosing our future over their past. Abraham took her hands. You've fought enough, Marigold. Maybe it's time to let this particular fight go. You think I should take it? I think you should do whatever brings you peace. But if you're asking my opinion, yes, take the money. End this. Let us start our life without looking over our shoulders. Marigold stared at the fire for a long time. It feels like Harold wins. Harold's dead. His family's trying to save face. We're alive, married with a ranch to run and a life to build. Who really wins? The next morning, Marigold signed the papers. Hartley handed over a bank draft for $5,000 and left without another word. The deputies were gone by noon. It's really over, Sal, Abraham said, holding the bank draft like it might disappear. That part is, Marigold agreed. Now the hard part starts. The hard part, living. Just living without crisis or threat. Figuring out who we are when we're not fighting for survival. Winter settled over the valley in earnest snow, blanketing everything in pristine white. Abraham and Marigold fell into a routine morning chores, afternoon repairs, evening by the fire. They learned each other's rhythms, preferences, peculiarities. Marigold, it turned out, hummed when she was content, a low, tuneless sound that Abraham found oddly soothing. Abraham talked to the horses full conversations that made Marigold smile. They don't talk back, you know, she said one morning, catching him mid-discussion with Buttercup. They're excellent listeners, though. One evening, as snow fell heavily outside, Marigold suddenly said, Margaret. What? My name. My real name is Margaret. Marigold was my mother's attempt to make me special. She looked at him. I haven't told anyone that in 10 years. Do you want me to call you Margaret? No, I'm Marigold, now have been for so long that Margaret feels like someone else, someone weaker. She paused. But I wanted you to know all of me. Thank you, Abraham said, simply understanding the gift of that trust. As winter deepened, they received a letter from San Francisco. Walton had been arrested for fraud. Apparently he'd tried the same scheme there and picked the wrong target. He was facing prison time. Karma, Marigold said with satisfaction. Justice, Abraham corrected. Sometimes they're the same thing. One night Abraham woke to find Marigold's side of the bed empty. He found her on the porch despite the cold, staring at the stars. Couldn't sleep. Dreaming about Harold, about all the men like him I've had to fight. She pulled her coat tighter. Sometimes I wonder if it's broken something in me. If I'll ever be able to be, soft, gentle, the things a wife should be. Abraham stood beside her, close enough to touch, but not touching. You are gentle. Every morning when you feed the horses, talking to them in that low voice. When you helped Jake Morrison with his reading yesterday, patient as a saint. When you touch me, he stopped, embarrassed. When I touch you, she prompted softly. When you touch me, it's with such care, like you're afraid you'll break me. I am afraid of that. I'm not breakable, Marigold, and you're not broken. You're just forged, like good steel. The heating and hammering doesn't break it, it makes it stronger. She turned to him then, and in the starlight he saw tears on her cheeks, the first he'd ever seen from her. I love you, she said simply. I didn't think I could anymore, but I do. I love you too. Have since you stood in my doorway and announced you were my wife. That's insane. That's true. They kissed then there in the freezing night, and it was nothing like their wedding kiss. This was hunger and promise, and the desperate need of two lonely people finding they weren't alone anymore. Spring came slowly to the valley, but when it did, it brought unexpected bounty. The copper deposits Isaac had known about proved accessible after all, not in vast quantities, but enough to bring in steady income. The ranch prospered. They hired hands for the busy season, bought more cattle, expanded the operation. One day Abraham came home to find Marigold sitting at the table with a letter, her expression unreadable. What is it? She handed him the letter. It was from a woman in Colorado asking for Marigold's help. Her husband was abusive, the law wouldn't help, and she'd heard stories about a woman who defended those who couldn't defend themselves. You're going to go, Abraham said. It wasn't a question. I don't have to. Yes, you do. It's who you are. I'm your wife now. I have responsibilities here. And one of those responsibilities is being who you truly are. The woman who helps, who stands up. He sat beside her. How long would you be gone? A week, maybe 2. Then go. The ranch will be here when you get back. I'll be here. She looked at him with such gratitude it took his breath away. You really mean that? I married a warrior marigold. I don't get to complain when she goes to war. She left the next day and Abraham found the cabin impossibly empty without her. But when she returned 2 weeks later, there was a lightness to her that hadn't been there before. The woman, he asked. Safe. The husband reconsidered his life choices. Did you kill him? Didn't have to, just showed him what could happen if he didn't change. Sometimes the threat is enough. This became their pattern. Marigold would get letters somehow word had spread about the giant woman who helped, and she would go returning with new scars sometimes, but always returning. I'm building something, she told Abraham one night. A network. Women who watch out for each other send word when help's needed. Be careful, he said. The world doesn't like women who organize. The world doesn't like me anyway. Might as well give it a good reason. The summer brought unexpected visitors to the ranch. Abraham was mending fence when he saw the wagon approaching, and his blood chilled when he recognized the passengers, 2 women and 3 children, all bearing the unmistakable look of hard travel and harder times. But it was the woman driving who made him drop his hammer. She had Marigold's height, though she was thinner and her hair was lighter. But the resemblance was unmistakable. You must be Abraham, the woman said, climbing down from the wagon. I'm Ruth, Marigold's sister. Abraham stood frozen. Marigold had never mentioned a sister, never mentioned any family at all. Is she here? Ruth asked, and there was something desperate in her voice. She's away, helping someone. Abraham found his voice. I didn't know she had a sister. She has 3. Had 4, but consumption took Mary 2 winters back. Ruth gestured to the wagon. These are my children. That's my friend Anna and her daughter. We need help, and I didn't know where else to go. Abraham looked at the frightened faces in the wagon, then back at Ruth. Come inside. Tell me what's wrong. The story came out over coffee and what food Abraham could quickly prepare. Ruth's husband had died in a mining accident, leaving her with debts and 3 children. Anna's husband had abandoned her after beating her nearly to death. They'd been traveling for weeks following rumors of Marigold, not even sure she was still alive. She left when she was 17, Ruth said, after what happened with Harold Brennan. Our father threw her out, said she'd brought shame on the family. I was only 12 then. I tried to find her over the years, but she disappeared so completely. How did you find her now? Stories, whispers, about a giant woman who helps those who can't help themselves. I knew it had to be her. Margaret was always protecting people, even when it cost her everything. Abraham settled them in the house, giving up his and Marigold's bed for the women and children. He sent word to town, hoping someone knew where Marigold had gone, but all he could do was wait. She returned 3 days later, riding hard, her face grim. She'd gotten his message somehow. That network of hers was more extensive than he'd realized. She dismounted at the gate, staring at the house like it might attack her. They're inside, Abraham said softly. Your sister Ruth, her children, and another woman with a child. I know who they are. Marigold's voice was flat. I've been getting reports about them for weeks. I just didn't think they'd actually come here. They need help. Everyone needs help. But she walked toward the house anyway, each step looking like it cost her. The reunion was not what Abraham had expected. No tearful embraces, no joyful cries. Ruth stood when Marigold entered, and the 2 women stared at each other across 20 years of separation. Margaret, Ruth said softly, it's Marigold now. You look different. I am different. Marigold's eyes went to the children who were staring at her with a mixture of awe and fear. These are yours. Yes, Thomas, he's 8, Sarah's 6, little Mary is 4. Ruth's voice broke slightly on the last name. I named her for our sister. Something shifted in Marigold's expression. How did she die? Badly. Alone mostly. Father wouldn't let me tend her at the end, said she'd been corrupted by your influence. I never even wrote to her. That didn't matter to him. You were the devil in our house, the example of everything we weren't supposed to be. Ruth stepped closer. But you were also the reason I survived. Every time Father raised his hand, I thought of you fighting Harold Brennan. Every time my husband wasn't kind, I remembered you refusing to be small. Marigold turned away, but Abraham saw her shoulders shaking slightly. You shouldn't have come here. Where else could I go? You're the only family I have left who might give a damn. What about Father Dutt? Dead 5 years now. Drank himself to death cursing your name. Ruth's voice was bitter. Mother followed within a month. Couldn't live without someone to serve. The silence stretched until little Mary tugged on her mother's skirt. Mama, is she the giant lady from the stories? Yes, sweetheart. The child looked up at Marigold with enormous eyes. Are you going to eat us? Despite everything, Marigold laughed, that grinding sound that Abraham had learned meant genuine amusement. No, little one. I only eat villains. Are you a villain? Mary shook her head solemnly. I'm good. Mostly. Sometimes I steal cookies. Will cookie thieves get a pass, son? Marigold knelt down, bringing herself to the child's level. I'm your Aunt Marigold. I know I look scary, but I promise I'm here to help. You don't look scary, Mary said matter-of-factly. You look strong, like you could fight bears. I have fought a bear, actually. Really? Thomas, the 8-year-old, suddenly looked interested. Did you win? We called it a draw. The bear decided I wasn't worth the trouble, and I decided the same about him. Over the next days, an uneasy peace settled over the cabin. Ruth and Anna took over much of the household work, grateful to have something to contribute. The children, after their initial wariness, attached themselves to Marigold with the fierce devotion of those who recognize a protector. Abraham watched his wife navigate this sudden family with a combination of discomfort and desperate tenderness. She was awkward with affection, but endlessly patient with questions. She taught Thomas to shoot, showed Sarah how to track rabbits, carried little Mary on her shoulders despite Ruth's protests about propriety. She's good with them, Anna said one evening, watching Marigold teach the children to identify edible plants. Natural mother instincts. Abraham saw Marigold freeze at those words, her whole body going rigid. That night she stayed out late, only coming to bed after she thought he was asleep. Talk to me, he said into the darkness. I can't be what they need, she said finally. I don't know how to be an aunt, a sister. I barely know how to be a wife. You're doing fine with all three. I'm performing, playing a role, waiting for them to realize I'm not what they hope I am. Abraham rolled over, finding her face in the darkness. What do they hope you are? Safe, stable, someone who can give them a home. You are all those things. I'm a killer, Abraham. I've got blood on my hands that won't wash off. That's not the kind of person children should be around. You're someone who protects those who need protecting. That's exactly the kind of person children should be around. A week passed then, too. Abraham could see Marigold struggling with the constant presence of others, the noise and chaos that children brought. She started taking longer rides, staying away most of the day. Ruth noticed. She's going to run, Ruth said one morning while Marigold was out. It's what she does when things get too complicated. She won't run from me, Abraham said firmly. Maybe not from you, but from us. From the reminder of everything she left behind. Ruth shook her head. You didn't know her before Mr. Callahan, before Harold Brennan. She was different then, softer. She laughed more. She laughs now. Not the same way. Now she laughs like someone who's forgotten how and is trying to remember. Ruth paused. I need to show you something. She retrieved a small, worn photograph from her belongings. It showed a group of young women, all tall, all strong-featured, all smiling. Abraham recognized a younger Marigold immediately. She stood in the center, the tallest, her arm around a smaller girl, who must have been Mary. That was taken a month before Harold Brennan, Ruth said. Look at her face. Abraham studied the photograph. The young woman in it was recognizable as Marigold, but Ruth was right. There was an openness to her expression that he'd never seen, a joy that hadn't survived whatever came after. She was going to be a teacher, Ruth continued. Can you imagine? She loved books, loved learning, used to read to us every night doing all the voices. Then Harold saw her at a town dance, decided he wanted her, and everything changed. She survived. Parts of her did, but that girl in the photograph, she died that night with Harold. Ruth took the photograph back. I'm not saying she's not happy with you. I can see she is. But we're reminders of what she lost, and I don't think she knows how to reconcile who she was with, who she's become. That evening, Marigold returned later than usual, and Abraham could smell whiskey on her breath, something she rarely indulged in. There's a situation, she said without preamble. 3 towns over. A man named Patterson is terrorizing a family, trying to force them off their land. They've asked for my help. When would you leave? Tonight, ideally. It's a 2-day ride and time matters. Abraham studied her face, seeing the relief there at having an excuse to go. This is about Ruth, isn't it? This is about people needing help. Marigold. I can't be what they need, Abraham. Ruth wants her sister back, but that person doesn't exist anymore. I'm just disappointing them by being here. You're wrong. You're showing them that survival is possible, that strength comes in different forms. He caught her hands. Don't run from this. I'm not running. I'm going where I'm needed. You're needed here too. She pulled away. No, I'm wanted here. There's a difference. Those people in Millfield actually need what I can provide. Ruth and her children need stability, normalcy, things I can't give them. They need family. Then they came to the wrong place. I don't know how to be family anymore. She left that night despite Abraham's protests. Ruth watched from the window as Marigold rode away, her expression unreadable. She'll come back, Abraham said, though he wasn't entirely sure. Maybe. But each time she leaves, a little less of her returns. Ruth turned from the window. We should go. We're driving her from her own home. You're not going anywhere. This ranch is big enough for all of us. Your wife doesn't seem to agree. My wife is scared. There's a difference between running from fear and running from hatred. She doesn't hate you. She's terrified of failing you. 3 days passed with no word. Abraham threw himself into ranch work, teaching Thomas how to mend fence, letting Sarah help with the horses. Little Mary followed him everywhere, chattering constantly about everything and nothing. Why did Aunt Marigold go away? She asked on the 4th day. To help someone. Why doesn't she help us? Oh, she is helping, just in her own way. I think she's sad, Mary said matter-of-factly. Her eyes looked like Mama's when Papa left. On the 5th day, a rider came with news. There had been violence in Millfield. Marigold was alive but wounded. She was recovering at the doctor's house but refusing to come home. Abraham left immediately despite Ruth's offer to come with him. He rode through the night, arriving in Millfield at dawn. The doctor, a thin man named Hutchinson, led him to a back room where Marigold lay on a narrow bed, her left arm heavily bandaged, bruises coloring her face. What happened? She didn't open her eyes. Patterson had more men than expected, got careless. The family safe. Patterson's in jail or hell, depending on whether he survived the night. Abraham sat on the edge of the bed. Come home. This is what I am, Abraham. This is what I do. I leave. I fight. I bleed. That's not the life Ruth's children should see. It's life. Real life. Messy and dangerous and worth living. She finally opened her eyes. I saw Mary in that photograph Ruth has. She looked just like little Mary does now, full of hope and trust and belief that the world is good. I couldn't protect my sister Mary from the world's cruelty. What makes you think I can protect Ruth's Mary? Because you're not 17 anymore. Because you've learned that protection isn't about keeping people from all harm, it's about teaching them to survive it. I don't know how to teach that without becoming the harm myself. Then learn. Like you learned to be a wife. Like you're learning to be part of a community. Abraham took her uninjured hand. Stop running from the possibility of failure and embrace the possibility of success. She was quiet for a long moment. What if they see what I really am? A woman who's survived terrible things and chosen to help others survive them too. I think they already see that. A killer. A protector. There's a difference, and you know it. The doctor knocked, entering with fresh bandages. She needs rest, Mr. Callahan. That arm took serious damage. How serious? She may not regain full use of it. The muscles were badly torn. Abraham felt Marigold's hand tighten in his. For someone who lived by her physical strength, this was devastating news. I can still shoot with my right, she said quietly. There's more to life than shooting. Not my life. Abraham stayed with her through the day, helping her eat, reading to her from a book the doctor provided. As evening fell, she finally agreed to come home. But if Ruth and the children are uncomfortable, they won't be. The ride home was slow. Marigold cradled against Abraham's chest on Buttercup, while Tempest followed behind. She was fevered by the time they arrived, infection setting in despite the doctor's care. Ruth took charge immediately, her years of tending children translating into efficient nursing. She bathed Marigold's fevered skin, changed bandages, forced medicine between reluctant lips. "Why?" Marigold asked during a lucid moment. "After everything, why help me?" "Because you're my sister," Ruth said simply. That never changed no matter what Father said. The fever broke after 3 days. Marigold woke to find little Mary curled against her good side, the child having snuck in during the night. She was worried, Ruth explained, trying to extract her daughter without waking her. "Let her stay," Marigold said softly. "She's warm." As Marigold recovered, the children became her constant companions. Thomas read to her from his adventure books, his voice cracking with approaching adolescence. Sarah brought her flowers carefully arranged in tin cups. Little Mary simply chattered, filling the silence with stories about everything she'd seen and done and imagined. "They're not afraid of me," Marigold said one evening, wonder in her voice. "Children rarely are afraid of what adults fear," Abraham said. "They see clearer sometimes." Little Mary asked if my scars hurt. When I said no, she said good, and went back to playing. That's simple. Maybe we should all be more like little Mary. Anna, who had been quiet through most of their stay, finally approached Marigold one morning. "I need to learn," she said simply. "To fight, to defend myself, my daughter. Will you teach me?" Marigold studied her. "It's not easy, and once you know how to hurt someone, you can't unknow it." "I already know how to be hurt. I'd like to know the other side too." So began morning lessons in the yard. Anna was a quick learner driven by desperation transformed into determination. Ruth joined them after a few days, then Sarah insisted she was old enough to learn too. "You're building an army," Abraham joked, watching them practice basic defensive moves. "I'm building survivors," Marigold corrected. As her arm slowly healed, Marigold adapted. She learned to compensate for the weakness to fight differently. It frustrated her. Abraham could see it in the set of her jaw when she couldn't lift what she once could, but she persisted. "You're still formidable," he told her one night after she'd struggled with a hay bale. "I'm diminished." "You're changed, not the same thing." "Pretty words don't make my arm work properly." "No, but they might make you see that you're more than just your physical strength. You always have been." One morning, a month after the injury, Abraham woke to find Marigold sitting at the kitchen table with Ruth looking at the old photograph. "I barely remember being her," Marigold said, touching her younger self's face. "She's still in there, changed, scarred, but there. I see her when you laugh at Mary's jokes, when you're patient with Thomas's endless questions, when you look at Abraham." Ruth paused. "She didn't die that night with Harold. She evolved." "Into what?" "Into someone who could survive, and now into someone who can help others survive too." A letter arrived that afternoon, another plea for help. Marigold read it, then set it aside. "You're not going?" Abraham asked. "Not yet. My arm's not ready." "That's not why." She looked at him, then at the children playing in the yard. "No, it's not." "Then why?" "Because Ruth was right. If I keep leaving, eventually I won't come back. Not because I don't want to, but because I'll forget how." She flexed her weak hand. "And because maybe there are different ways to help. Teaching Anna and Ruth to fight. Showing the children that strength isn't about size or scars. Being present. Being family," Abraham added softly. "I don't know how to do that." "You're already doing it." That evening, they all ate dinner together around the expanded table Abraham and Thomas had built. The conversation was lively. Multiple voices talking over each other, laughter punctuating stories. Marigold was quiet, but present, occasionally adding a dry comment that made everyone laugh. After dinner, as had become tradition, Marigold told a story. Not from a book, but from her travels. She'd resisted at first, saying her stories weren't for children, but Ruth had insisted. "Tell them the truth of the world," she'd said, "but tell it with hope." So Marigold told them about the woman in Colorado who'd fought off 3 men with nothing but a cast-iron pan and determination. About the child in Wyoming who'd walked 20 miles through a blizzard to get help for her injured father. About the town that had stood together against a corrupt sheriff, winning through solidarity rather than violence. "Are they all true?" Thomas asked. "Every word." "Even the bear, especially the bear." As the children were put to bed, Abraham and Marigold sat on the porch watching stars emerge. "Ruth and Anna are talking about staying," Abraham said, "building a cabin on the north section, close enough to help, far enough for privacy. How do you feel about that? Like our family is growing in ways I never expected." "Family," Marigold repeated. "Is that what we are now? Isn't it all of us broken in different ways, choosing to be whole together? When you put it like that, it sounds almost poetic." "I have my moments." She leaned against him, her solid weight comforting. "I got another letter today, not asking for help, offering it. There's a woman in Helena, a lawyer's widow. She wants to fund what I do, create a formal network. Safe houses, legal aid, transportation for women who need to disappear." "That's incredible." "It's dangerous. Making it formal makes it a target." "Everything worthwhile is dangerous." Abraham turned to look at her. "Are you going to do it?" "I want to, but it would mean traveling more, at least at first, setting things up, establishing connections." "Then do it. What about Ruth and the children will be here? This is home base, the place you come back to. The rest is just logistics." Marigold was quiet for a moment. "I love you very much, Abraham Callahan. And I love you, Marigold Callahan, even broken and scarred and difficult. Especially then. Though I'd argue you're not broken. You're like one of those Japanese bowls, the ones where they fix the cracks with gold, more beautiful for having been shattered. You've been reading again. Tom Morrison got a book about art. Thought it might civilize us frontier folks. Did it work? Well, I'm comparing my wife to fine art, so you tell me." She laughed, that genuine sound he loved. "Your flattery is improving." "I've been practicing." The sound of approaching horses interrupted them. Abraham tensed, but Marigold put a hand on his arm. "It's Jake Morrison. I recognize Buttercup's sister's gait." Sure enough, Jake rode into view, but he wasn't alone. Behind him rode a woman, young, bruised, holding a baby. "Mrs. Callahan," Jake said urgently. "She showed up at the store asking for you. Pa said to bring her straight here." The woman almost fell from the horse exhaustion, evident in every line of her body. "You're Marigold, the one who helps." "I am. My husband. He's coming. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. He'll kill me this time. I know he will." Without hesitation, Marigold stood. "Then he'll have to go through me first. Jake, ride back to town. Tell your father and the sheriff what's happening. Abraham helped me get her inside." As they settled the woman, her name was Catherine, and her baby Ruth and Anna emerged, taking in the situation immediately. "We've got her," Ruth said. "You prepare for whatever's coming." Abraham and Marigold moved with practiced efficiency, checking weapons, positioning themselves. But Marigold also did something new. She sent Thomas to the neighbor's ranch with a message calling in help. "I'm learning," she said to Abraham's questioning look. "We don't have to face things alone." By midnight, they had reinforcements. Tom Morrison, Sheriff Boone, even Mrs. Forrester's husbandmen who'd answered the call because Marigold had asked, because she'd proven herself to their community. The husband arrived at dawn, drunk and furious, with 2 equally drunk companions. They didn't expect resistance. They certainly didn't expect a small army. "Turn around, Jake," Marigold called out, standing tall despite her injured arm. "She's under my protection now." "Protection," the man laughed. "From a crippled woman and some shopkeepers." "From a community," Sheriff Boone corrected. "And if you're smart, you'll leave now while you still can." What followed wasn't a fight. It was a rout. The three men, faced with overwhelming odds and sober determination, fled. The sheriff promised to follow up to make sure they didn't return. As everyone dispersed, Catherine emerged from the house, her baby in her arms. "Thank you," she said to Marigold. "All of you." "This is what we do," Marigold said simply. "We stand together." Later, as the sun rose, fully painting the valley gold, Abraham found Marigold teaching Catherine the same defensive moves she'd taught Anna and Ruth. Her arm was still weak, but she adapted, showing how to use leverage instead of strength. "You're building that network," he observed, "right here." "Starting to. Each woman I help who helps another who helps another. Eventually, we cover the whole territory. And then maybe the Harold Brennans of the world learn to be afraid for once." That evening, with the house full of voices and laughter and hope, Abraham pulled out Isaac's journal. He'd been reading it slowly, learning about his brother's last years. He found an entry from near the end. "I see it now. What Abraham and Marigold could be together. Not just husband and wife, but something more. A refuge, a rallying point, a place where the broken come to heal and the weak come to grow strong. I'm leaving them more than land. I'm leaving them the chance to build something that matters. I hope they take it." "You were right, brother," Abraham said quietly, looking at the scene before him. Marigold surrounded by children and women, teaching, protecting, building. Indeed, something that mattered. Marigold caught his eye across the room, smiled that rare, genuine smile that transformed her face. She was scarred, yes, changed by violence and loss, but she was also magnificent, a force of nature channeled into purpose. Abraham smiled back, thinking of all the seasons to come, all the people they'd help, all the lives they'd change. The ranch Isaac had left them was becoming something neither brother had imagined: a sanctuary, a training ground, a home for those who needed one. The giant woman he'd inherited from his dying brother had become so much more than a wife. She'd become a partner, a protector, a builder of networks and hope. And together, they were creating a legacy that would outlast them both. As night fell over the valley, Marigold began another story for the children. This one was new, about a woman who thought she was too broken to be loved, a man who thought he was too ordinary to matter, and how they discovered that together they were extraordinary. "Is it true?" little Mary asked sleepily. "The truest story I know," Marigold said, her eyes finding Abraham's across the room. And in that moment, with their chosen family around them and their future stretching out like an open road, Abraham knew that Isaac's greatest gift hadn't been the ranch or even Marigold herself. It had been the chance to discover who they could become together, forged in crisis, tempered by love, and strong enough to shelter others from the storms. The giant woman he'd inherited had become his wife, his partner, his equal in all things. And their story, Abraham realized, was just beginning.